Fair Play, a novel by Pete Fisher. Chapter 30. Motorway Madness. Martin opened the back door of the big VW estate car and put his bag in. He looked at the enormous empty load space. He hoped it would be enough. Martin fired up the diesel engine and pulled away from the pavement outside his backyard bedsit. At 6 a.m. it was still cool. He put a mixtape in the cassette player, lit a cigarette and wound down the window. The summer air blew in and the smoke blew out. He'd fueled up the night before. He could fill up again in Calais. The Passat was a real whale of a car, the biggest Martin had ever owned. It cruised happily at about 75 miles an hour and had a range of 1,000 kilometres on a tank full of diesel. The perfect car for the trip. Martin drove due west for about 4.5 hours. He filled up with cheap diesel on the dual carriageway into Calais. He was on the ferry around midday. It was the English ferry, so they were serving greasy breakfasts and fish and chips. Martin sat at a window table, enjoying a fry-up and reading his paper. Bliss! He went up on deck afterwards for a smoke. He watched the white cliffs get nearer. A strange mixture of nostalgic homecoming and foreign holiday. Back in the bottom of the ship, Martin rummaged through the glove compartment for a suitable mixtape. He drove up and out of the boat into the English sunshine. He pulled up slowly beside the customs kiosk, his passport at the ready. So it's a German car you're driving, is it, sir? Martin thought that was obvious. That's right, VW Passat, great cars. No, sir, I meant the country where it was made. Yes, made in Germany. So you live there, do you, sir? That's right. Martin was getting a bit impatient, but managed to remain polite. Is it your car, sir? Yes, it is. Here, all in there. Martin handed him the German logbook and insurance document. The customs officer peered at them as if they were in hieroglyphics. What is the purpose of your visit to the UK, sir? See my mum. Martin kept it simple, with a homely touch. I see. Drive into that shed down there on the left, please, sir. Martin sighed, but did as he was told. He'd hoovered the front of the car at the gas station the night before. The two customs officers took out the mats, the spare wheel, the jack, the toolbox and the first aid kit, and then rummaged through Martin's bag. They went around the car tapping the body panels. Finally, after about 20 minutes, they gave him his passport back. They were clearly disappointed not to have found anything except 2 bottles of German beer and 2 packets of Dutch tobacco. Drive safely, sir. Don't forget to keep left. The guy had a point. Martin had fully adjusted to driving a German car on the right. Now he had to drive it on the left. He just followed the other cars at first. The series of roundabouts before reaching the main road presented a challenge. He trained himself to go anti-clockwise around roundabouts in Germany. Now he had to go the other way and move over to the left before exiting. He elicited indignant hoots after cutting a couple of cars up on the first roundabout. Things went more smoothly after that. Settling down on a straight road, he soon reached the motorway. Used to mostly 2-lane autobahn, this was 3-lane. People generally kept their distance. People also kept to the speed limit. On empty stretches of motorway, English drivers would often just sit and hog the middle lane at 60, like it was America. It seemed like everyone was on Valium. Sitting on the wrong side of the car, made overtaking tricky. He was unable to see people coming into his blind spot. He had to crane his neck, turning round to look. If he did pull out in front of a faster car, they often slowed down to let him out. That was unheard of on the Autobahn. It confused Martin a few times. He learnt a lot on that trip. A mixture of nostalgia, romance, and eager anticipation swirled round Martin's head as he drove west across London towards Camden. After calling in at his mum's and picking his stuff up at Mike's, he was on the way home. Amanda had been back in England for a few months now. She lived in a typical Georgian terraced house with white frontage and an iron balustrade on the first floor. Martin parked a few houses down. He went up the steps and rang the flat doorbell nervously. Amanda let him in via the intercom. "Hi Martin, it's open, second floor." The system buzzed loudly and the front door clicked open. Martin went in and climbed the stairs to the second floor landing. Amanda greeted him on the landing with a hug. She showed him into the flat. She shared with a colleague. She was conveniently away for the weekend. Amanda had cooked dinner. She'd obviously gone to a lot of trouble. Martin tucked in thankfully. Sunday roast with all the trimmings. After they'd eaten, Amanda suggested they go down to her local. It was just at the bottom of the road. Amanda got the drinks in while Martin secured a sofa. "It's really nice to see you again." Martin felt the same, but he felt strangely unsure of himself. "Last time it was in that bloody Irish pub." Amanda laughed. "With that awful Elka woman wanting to scratch my eyes out." "Yeah, sorry about that. Nothing happened, by the way. I paid for it with my hangover, I can tell you." Amanda made a bold suggestion. "You know you can stay here tonight if you want. You don't have to drive back." Martin jumped slightly at her words. It was what he wanted to hear, but he was a bit scared. "I know I don't. This is so stupid. I ought to get back. But I don't have to be home till tomorrow night. So stay." "I'm going to drive back tonight. Maybe it's best we both just carry on with our lives. But you're really special, you know that, don't you?" Amanda hugged him close. Martin could feel she was trying not to cry. "Why do you have to be so bloody sensible?" Martin laughed gently and held her tight. Driving through London at night in the dark was eerie. He hardly glanced at his street map book. He still remembered the way through the East End and then the southeast suburbs. In a couple of hours, he was sitting at the ferry port in Dover, waiting to board. Martin made straight for the cafeteria on the ferry and got himself some coffee. He sat in a quiet corner and thought about Amanda, another girl he'd left behind. He still had a sizable lump of hash left. Just before the ferry docked, he swallowed it. He washed it down with the last of his coffee. Martin drove off the ferry and through the deserted customs checkpoint. There wasn't a soul in sight. He could have saved the hash for when he got home. He didn't think any more of it until he was cruising east down the Belgian motorway, listening to drum and bass. Perfect Autobahn music. He realised he was really stoned. The car almost drove itself. The motorway was empty and mostly straight ahead. In what seemed like a couple of hours, he was on the outskirts of Cologne at dawn, turning off to head south. Home again.